Welcome to Dem Boyz, a podcast that is joined today by a very special guest. We have with us today one of the co-hosts of the LockedOn Cowboys podcast, or as I like to call him, the good cop of LockedOn Cowboys. You can find him on X at McCoolBCB, on Blue Sky at McCool.bsky.social. The one and only Mr. West Coast, Mr. Landon McCool. Landon, thanks for joining us tonight.
Listen, that's a great intro. The only thing I'm a little disappointed that you didn't. My over under on how many puns you would make in my intro was 5, and the fact that you severely undercut that is really going against what I feel about you. But it still works.
Yeah, I had the over 2, Landon. So don't feel bad.
We got some inside. There may be some inside market trading going on, like the NBA. Yeah,
I think what's happening.
The puns got pulled by the people in the know. That's what happened.
Little inside work happening to make sure to keep the numbers down. I see. All right.
Exactly. I mean, Vegas has all those hotels for a reason, right?
That's right. House of the
Brandon, real quick before we go ahead with Landon here, who's the good cop, bad cop of us? Have we just figured that out yet?
I think we're both bad cops.
I'm a bad Saints fan. I mean, I don't know.
So
right. That's another time. We'll figure that out.
You're just a bunch of cops, basically. Is what it is.
Yeah, exactly. So, all right. So we wanted to have you on, obviously, to get your Cowboys expertise on a few topics. I think Paul, as a Saints fan, with Kellen Moore also taking over there, may have some questions on your thoughts there. But we'll start with the Cowboys. So. Draft's behind us. George Pickens trade has been made. Just overall, how do you feel about the Cowboys offseason with what they did in free agency, the draft? How do you feel that they've addressed the issues that they had coming into the offseason?
I think the words are cautiously optimistic. You know, I mean, I'm a Cowboys fan, so I've been hurt before. That
is my favorite phrase around this time of year, is cautiously optimistic.
Yeah. Look, I think everybody's kind of doing. They're somewhere on their stage of the meme of the circle of being a Cowboys fan, between hating the team and then finding their hope again and then all in and then getting crushed. I think we're somewhere between. I think most of us, at least, are somewhere between hating the team and finding their hope again and excited. They're in that little bottom swing of the cycle.
Yep.
I think for me, it starts with the Schottenheimer hire, right? And I really wanted a good explanation as to why Schottenheimer was the hire. Because to me, like, on its face, right, when we first got the news, it was infuriating in a lot of ways, because I think it was probably unrealistic for us to think that they were going to interview Ben Johnson, or that Ben Johnson would even take this job, or
right.
I think that there are some of these guys that, like, they were never going to come here, and whether that was by their choice or by the Joneses' choice, I think that there was certainly not always a thorough process of interviewing that you felt like went on. And so when it got announced, it was like, man, how am I not supposed to believe that this is just a continuation of what's going on with McCarthy? So since that point, Schottenheimer gave an incredible press conference, and he really laid out what he wanted to do. And you started to kind of get the idea of, okay, you see what the Joneses are doing here. Look, like I said, they weren't going to get Ben Johnson. They weren't going to get likely Liam Cohen. And if they weren't going to do that, like, you lay out the list of the other retread head coaches that were available, and Schottenheimer makes as much sense as the rest of them, frankly. And so you start to hear him talk about what he wants to do, and that's all well and good. We've heard that before. I think the difference for me is that Schottenheimer laid out what he wanted to do, and then they started to do the things that he wanted to do, right? Like they actually followed through with the things that they said they wanted. They talked about wanting to run the football more. They went out and drafted a guard in the first round and signed 2 or 3 guards, signed 2 running backs, and then drafted another 2 running backs. So I just feel like for the first time in a long time, the Cowboys are doing what they're saying that they're going to do, and their feet are matching their lips, which I think is an important step. So this is all why I'm cautiously optimistic, is because, again, I've been burned before, but the fact that we've seen every step of the way them kind of check boxes, I think that's all you can ask them to do at this point, and they've done it.
Yeah, I think what you said there about the kind of how things went, it seems like at first I felt like I don't even know if I want this guy to succeed, because if he does, it's just going to enable what seems like a bad process that they've just continued to have in place over and over again. And so, like, if this happens, if Schottenheimer works out, it'll be good results, bad process, right? And that's what you don't want with the team. You want them to just continue to, like, explore. You want them to do a big coaching search. So I felt like you, but like you said, like, kind of what he's said and kind of the vision that he's laid out has been encouraging. I think the way that the players have spoken about him has also helped. The offensive coordinator hire seems like a really good addition to
like the hiring process in general. Just, like, again, another step in, like, saying what he wants to do and then following through in it, right? Mm-hmm. Like, he wants to build a culture of toughness and of smart, a smart football. And then what does he do? He goes out and hires a guy that designed a run game that absolutely crushed this team, and frankly, crushed a lot of teams. Like, Arizona was a difficult team to stop the run against for a lot of different folks. James Conner is not, I love the guy and a great story, but he's not the most talented running back in the NFL. But he sure looked like it when you see it on Sunday, because of the designs that Clayton Adams had it handed. So yeah, I'm sorry to interrupt you, but it's like, that's, again, was kind of a continuation of it made sense. He wasn't hiring other people named Schottenheimer. He wasn't hiring, like, his drinking buddies, or, I mean, he completely revamped the Cowboys offensive staff, except for Lou DeWells, who was the only one of the offensive coaches I would have kept.
That's the one everybody wanted, right?
And so I just feel like, and then what does he do? He gets smart coaches that make football sense with what he wants to do, not just guys who you don't feel like, it's like, even if you don't know who they are, you go and look up who they are, and you can see the vision of why. Oh, yeah, this guy is the Kansas State offensive line coach. Kansas State consistently has put surprising number of players in the NFL with their run game, and they have consistently overperformed in the Big 12 in that area. So it's like, it just makes a lot of sense. Like, whereas other times you've seen these hires and it's like, okay, yeah, I mean, yeah, you coached with his dad and 15 years ago or something, and he's a friend of your buddy. I get it. Like, I just don't feel like it's been that case so much. I mean, maybe a little bit with Flus on the defensive side, just because he's getting his guys in, but that, to me, like, that doesn't matter as much, because I feel like the defensive guys, when you're bringing in a system like that, you want to bring in your guys. So I give a little bit of a pass with those guys.
Yeah, it's not going to be Mike Nolan, hopefully.
No, hopefully not. No, like, that's the thing, is, like, I do like the idea of the retread head coach as your defensive coordinator. I just think, he's got to be recently the head coach, and not like a decade ago or whatever it was. With Nolan.
I did want to ask you.
I was going to jump in. I said, we're hoping in New Orleans that works out too. Head coach, retread as a defensive coordinator. But I'm sorry,
it's a good path. No, it's a good path. Like, it's look, I mean, there's a reason those guys get hired as head coaches, because their defenses are solid. And oftentimes, like, it's the reason you fail as a head coach is not the reasons you would fail as a defensive coordinator, right? And so you fall right back into a position where you know what you're doing as a defensive coordinator. Obviously, if you're a head coach, a former head coach, you had a lot of experience being a defensive coordinator.
Yeah, and then our former head coach is also now a defensive coordinator for the Chicago Bears.
Yeah. I mean, again, another guy that I feel like was a top of the market, a higher candidate for defensive coordinator. Dennis is
they can have him.
Incredible. No. Yeah, I get it. Listen, I loved his defenses. I hated playing him. I hated playing him, but as a head coach.
Don't get me wrong, Landon. I loved him too, but when he got hired as head coach, I had to do a lot of squinting.
Yeah.
Like, I think this is going to be okay. Yeah, it wouldn't.
much like he's like the defensive Josh McCown in some ways, right? Where it's like we've now seen this twice. It did not work.
It does not work.
Like he needs to be a coordinator only.
And I mean, with like McCown, he coached under a Hall of Fame coach, right? I mean, Sean Payton, Bill Belichick, obviously. So sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt the
no, it's good stuff.
The Cowboys speak.
Yeah, we talked about kind of Schotty's vision for the team. I wanted to kind of get your expectations for the offensive system. What kind of do you expect him to run? I know that he talked about like using kind of marrying the run in the pass and kind of using some more of the tighter formations. So if you had to kind of like use a current offensive system to kind of as a metaphor or simile, or just kind of what it'll most closely resemble, or if there are certain elements of other offensive systems, like we talk about the McVay, the Shanahan system, what do you kind of expect his offense to look like, or is it kind of more of an unknown situation here?
I think if I had to describe it, I what it sounds like he's describing to me is a Shanahan offense, right? Oh, sorry, a McVay offense, where he's talking about condensed formations. He's talking about, using condensed splits. He's talking about a gap-based, except that, I think that's the difference between Shanahan and McVay. It feels like at times is that McVay, as time has gone on, has moved away a little bit from the wide zone stuff and more kind of inside zone and some gap stuff, which I think that's kind of where I think you're going to look and see the Cowboys head towards. I don't really want to call it a McVay offense, because I think so much of what makes his offense is what makes McVay unique, is in his ability to kind of constantly recall things and understand situations, and just him as a play caller is what makes the McVay system really different. But Shanahan comes from Schotty comes from a West Coast background, and so and obviously that's a lot of the language that's currently in place with what McCarthy was doing. So I imagine it to be a lot of attacking up the field run game, whether that's gap or power, duo, inside zone more than outside zone, right? Attacking the short area of the field, creating space underneath with Pickens, kind of being a sort of top lifter, right? So that you can operate underneath. I mean, the truth of the matter is that I imagine that the offense is more going to be a Dak offense than it's going to be a Schottenheimer offense more than anything.
That was going to be my other question, was like, do you think they'll kind of like, do you think he'll work to kind of get Dak out of his comfort zone instead of kind of just the curls on third, run to the sticks and turn around?
Yeah, I think. Look, I think some of it. I think the truth of the matter is that the Dak can operate the way he wants to and be successful. I think the problem has been that Dak can't operate the way he wants to while having lesser talent at wide receiver and be successful, right? Because I think if you look at what they were doing with Kellen Moore, right? Just to kind of bring this in 2021, which is probably I would point to that those first 6 games with Kellen in 2021, if I'm getting my season right, was probably the best that Dak's ever looked, right? And I think that was all inside the confines of the more core yell aspects of the offensive stuff, the kind of stop routes you're talking about, the slants, and I think that stuff still exists. The seam route stuff. Like we're going to, that seam ball will be definitely coming back in a major way. So I think all of that is going to be built into the system. I think what we're going to see is more just how it's dressed up, how it's kind of executed, and that's going to be, kind of the play action aspect of it, the increased use of motion, the increased use of condensed formations just to create better angles. I think it's just about a lot of doing what Dak already does, except tweaking all the knobs that are available to you, which I feel like at times they just haven't done that.
Yeah, it seems like they've never really been able to find a system or a way of giving him easy answers. And I know that Dak is like one of the best at like reading defenses before the snap, one of the best quarterbacks in the league at pre-snap identification and checking his protections and getting them into the right play. Yep. But it seems like he's never just been able to like have easy answers. Like who was it on the Athletic Football Show? His former co-host, Nate Tice. He would always say, "There's no easy button there." It was always just like Dak go do it, and because Dak's so great at that, he could. You mentioned the seam ball. He's great at just hitting that seam route over and over again. But there's not and especially once you get into the playoffs and you're facing more difficult defenses, like they're taking away his fastball. And they don't have things to like. They don't have a secondary pitch to go to where he can just like quickly identify. And
stop routes are a problem if you can't get away from coverage at the top of the route, man. And if the only person who can do it is the guy that is guaranteed to be double covered on almost every single play, I mean, it's going to make Dak's life harder. I mean, because ultimately, like, what's your recourse, like, to call other routes, or like just to like to do a bunch of stuff that you haven't really practiced. So listen, I think it's all in the margins that this stuff gets better, right? Like when you have better weapons to draw attention away, it makes the same offense that we were all hating on look incredible. And it's like people say, like, it's all the same stuff. It's just how you call it, how you coach it, the coaching points, the finer technique tweaks that you make that make all the difference there. So I don't think that the offense is going to change necessarily, like, what routes get run, the most. I think how the routes get run, from what formation the routes get run, is there motion before the routes, is there play action, all of those things, those are the things that are likely to get heavily tweaked.
Right. And I think it's kind of interesting that, George Pickens is supposed to be the deep threat and like contested catch guy. And he took the number of the last guy who was our contested catch guy. 13. That's a kind of a perfect number there.
Oh.
Yeah, it felt like it was like, it's so funny because when the whole thing went down, I was talking about it with Marcus. Like, to me, Dak has constantly been chasing, wanting to get Michael Gallup back, right? Like, because that was his ultimate. That's the kind of the player that Dak likes to throw the ball downfield to, right?
Yep.
Even with Cooks, when Cooks was here, like, people are talking about how he took the top off the defenses. I mean, but Dak didn't really use him that way. Like, if Dak was throwing the ball down the field to him, it was on deep over routes and like coming across the field stuff. Like, Dak didn't necessarily, and like Turpin's an incredibly fast guy and he's shown some receiving ability. But Dak doesn't like throwing the ball to these kind of more diminutive speed guys down the field. He's just not comfortable doing it. He likes the bigger body kind of contested catch guys that he can throw the ball up and let him go get it. And Pickens is basically, Gallup, maybe on literal steroids. I don't know. But like, so it's like, that's what we're seeing. So yeah, to see him in the 13 jersey was kind of like a real shake to the system, to be honest.
Can I ask a quick follow-up on the Pickens deal?
Please.
Brandon, I know you and I have talked about it. So is the expectation, and I think you and I talked about it. Yeah, because you and I talked about it last week because it happened right before the Carr retirement. We had quite a week last week on the show. So it's the expectation that this is kind of we're going to see what happens this year and then, see where the chips fall as to whether or not they give him the extension going into going into next season?
Yeah, I mean, listen, I think the issue with Pickens is not on the field. Like, you watch it on the field. I mean, there may be some times where there's an issue on the field.
Jordan Lewis may take exception to that.
Strong disagrees. That's fair. But as far as like I said it on the show all the time. Every one of these wide receiver 2 situations that the Cowboys had an opportunity to get in, whether it's a draft pick, an unrestricted free agent like Cooper, or any of the other trade stuff that got suggested, every single one of those situations has warts. The George Pickens situation is the only one that frankly feels like an absolute perfect football fit, right? Mm-hmm. The problems are the attitude, the general kind of, whatever we want to label that stuff as. The way the Cowboys are mitigating that right now is that all sides are all on the same team. And I don't mean the Cowboys. I mean team pay George Pickens, right? Like CeeDee Lamb, Dak Prescott, Brian Schottenheimer, and especially George Pickens, who is the captain of team pay George Pickens. They are all facing the same direction. They all have the same goal, and that is for George Pickens to have a very big year this year. Because if George Pickens has a really big year this year, man, the Cowboys are doing big things. Like CeeDee Lamb is doing big things. Dak Prescott is doing big things. Brian Schottenheimer is doing big things. Everybody eats if Pickens has a big year. Yeah. The problem then becomes what happens in 2026. That's a problem down the road. So is it like, do you sign him and then he becomes a problem next year? Do you let him walk and see how that situation handles? Do you franchise tag him and really roll the dice on this situation?
Right.
Run it back.
So yeah, it's all on the table right now, but I think the smart choice is to do nothing as long as you can,
Right. Yeah, I mean, you that's a great point. I mean, if best case scenario, he has, like what you described, kind of a career year, rising tide lifts all boats kind of thing. Mm-hmm. And if I can ask a quick question on Dak, what year are we entering for Dak? What year is this?
10. This is year 10.
10.
So we're starting to get to a point where I don't want to be the Stephen A. Smith of this show, but like we're starting to get to that point where like his legacy's coming into play, right? Like we're going to start having these conversations of like, where does Dak stack up, in the pantheon of not just Cowboy quarterbacks, but obviously.
Buddy, we're having those conversations already.
Okay, fair enough.
Let me tell you.
Now listen, let me be clear. You can send them to New Orleans anytime you want. Like
I know. Trust me. I know. I'll send them all your way. Trust me. I'll go talk to New Orleans and see how they would feel about having Dak.
Right. He is a Louisiana guy after all.
He is, and he's a Saints fan too. Yeah.
Yeah, there you go. But I guess so. Like, how important? I guess to make it a very simple, plain question, how important a year is this for Dak going into year 10? New coach, obviously.
Every year is important at this point. Not to minimize your question, but absolutely. I mean, for the last 2 or 3 years, they've been incredibly important. He's on a huge contract. He's the highest paid player in the NFL. He's 32 years old. And so he's going to be 32 in the season, I think, at some point. So, I mean, the time's running out, man. Like, I think this was Romo's last year when he's this age. Dak's way better shape than Romo was.
Right.
Both, endurance wise and, beat up wise, I think.
Yep.
But I do think that, he's running out of opportunities. And at this point, when you get Pickens in, if this run game starts working the way you hope it can, you've got Micah Parsons, you've got, hopefully defensive back talent. You don't have a ton of excuses, so right. Absolutely. I think it's legacy time.
Another dumb question from the Saints fan. Who's running back 1 right now for Dallas?
Hey, that's a smart question from a Cowboys fan. Honestly, I mean, I think a coach would probably be struggling.
Miles Sanders is the answer.
Javonte. Javonte Williams?
I would probably put Javonte, above Miles Sanders. I mean, yeah, I mean, are we picking nits here? Like, I mean, honestly, who knows? Like, it's. I think we're gonna get a training camp and see how it all sorts out.
Landon, we know the real answer. It's Hunter Lupke.
Well, listen, that's number one in my heart for sure.
That was my guy. I wanted him, man. I wanted him and Deuce Vaughn. You got both my guys. I wanted when
one of those has worked out better than the other.
Yeah, I was gonna say one of those guys we've only just now mentioned. So yeah,
fair enough.
All right, we've talked about the offense. I wanted to get your kind of some information on Eberflus, because Eberflus is a Dallas guy. He was a linebackers coach here. Linebackers coach. What do you see? He's more of a cover 3 guy. Is that correct?
Yeah. And I mean, he's like the cover 3 version of Dan Quinn, right? He's more on the cover more of the cover 3 guy on the other side of the 1-3 balance between him and Dan Quinn.
Do you think what kind of do you think he'll kind of bring in the same sort of system that he ran in Chicago? Or what sort of changes do you think he'll kind of bring over here? I know one of the things that I really liked about hiring Zimmer last year was the fact that the Cowboys under Quinn had not had a high rate of like disguised coverages. And so that was something that I liked about the Zimmer hire. Do you think is Eberflus the same way as Quinn, or is he a little bit closer to Zimmer, somewhere in the middle, in terms of like how he runs his coverage schemes?
He's, it's interesting because he's done a little bit of all of it. I would say that he's known for being more traditionally kind of straightforward and not like he's known for just kind of playing it straight, and it wasn't a heavy blitzer when he was with Indianapolis. He didn't necessarily disguise his coverages a lot. But that sort of changed as he kind of got to the end of his tenure at Chicago. So to answer your question, I think it is an interesting question. Actually, not to answer your question, but to highlight your question, I think it's an interesting question. Like, I think what we'll get is a lot going to be based on personnel, I imagine. He hasn't ever been a guy that I think people would accuse of being overly creative with like how he deploys personnel. I think it's more of a straightforward. I think he finds his edges in technique and like teaching technique. I think he is sort of you mentioned like a linebacker whisperer a little bit. He does have some success in developing guys that were kind of picked out of the trash pile, and he's turned into superstars, or not superstars, but at least very extremely serviceable players, right? EJ Speed comes to mind, and obviously the guy that we just signed in this last round, Sanborn. Yeah, sorry. Yeah. I think so. So I think that's kind of what you're expecting, and I think from a coverage standpoint, it's a lot of zone. It's a lot of 3. It's a lot of quarters. These guys are all based in cover 2 originally, so there's probably a little bit of cover 2 in there as well. I don't think he plays a lot of man coverage, but I think he played a little bit more last year. I don't think he disguises his coverages very much, though I think he was doing a little bit more of that as well. So I think the thing where you're going to notice the biggest difference, especially between him and Dan Quinn, is that he is a lot more determined in his scheme and his just general focus in making sure that the defense, that the run is accounted for and that the run is solidified. He's not going to be one of these guys who's going to abandon run responsibilities to a defensive ends that are on their way to the quarterback. That was the old Quinn thing, is play the run on the way to the of the pass, right? That's not going to be the case here. They'll have sound run principles, and hopefully the kind of big bodies up front that will allow them to get to third downs where they can attack the passer.
You led me right into my next question, because that's the big question I think is going into this offseason. The Achilles heel of this defense for the past several years has been the run defense. I know they brought back Osa, which at a pretty good price, which I was really happy with. They added a couple of guys in the draft. You and Marcus talked about that on today's episode of LockedOn Cowboys. What do you think? Do you think they've done enough in the personnel department to shore up the run defense? Do you think what they've done in concert with the hire of Eberflus is going to be enough to keep them from being I can't remember if it's above or below the McCool-Mosher line?
Yeah, I actually don't know whether it's above or below either. Honestly, I think it's probably below, if I'm not mistaken.
Is that copyrighted? The McCool?
Listen, I hate that it's called the McMosher line. I came up with it, and my name has basically been cut out of the whole thing. It's my own fault. It's my own fault because I called it the McMosher line, to be honest. So the McCool-Mosher line, as we'll forever refer to it,
most cool line.
Just to explain it, is the hypothetical line in which your run defense becomes so bad that it that it becomes the most important part of the most consequential part of your team. That it that doesn't really matter how good your quarterback or your passing attack is, or how good your running game is. If you can't defend the run at a certain level, then nothing else matters really. To quote Metallica. So I think, what they've done so far, I think, is investment, which is more than what we've seen at certain points. Right. I think that the Solomon Thomas signing is pretty much a wash in that area, probably with Golston. But I think, you drafted 2 different defensive tackles, one of which I felt like was a real value. I think, we saw the Brugler had him as a 3-4, and we got him in the 7th, right? And I think you see that on tape. I don't know that they're done at the position yet, but I think that what they've done so far, and considering who they have hired, and I mean that not just in Flus, but in Whitehead as well. Mm-hmm. I think they've made commitments to being more serious about stopping the run. They've talked about, it was one of the things that they've talked about, and like I said earlier, so far they've kind of followed through on everything they've talked about. So I wouldn't be shocked if they got into training camp, they found out that maybe they didn't have enough. If they added another veteran, I wouldn't also not be shocked if they got in, were pleasantly surprised with what they got from Toa, and Mozzie Smith comes in looking like a new guy, and suddenly you're perfectly fine in the defensive tackle position. So I think there's a wide range of outcomes there.
Yeah, I think Mozzie Smith has kind of gotten lost in the wash here, just kind of with everything that's happened. I'm hopeful that he kind of has, he lost all that weight in the first season, and then kind of just
got the shoulder surgery, so he didn't really get a chance to kind of build it back up. This is his first year to actually have a full off season to actually as a professional, right? So yeah, I agree with you. I'm one of the people that is hasn't forgotten about Mozzie and understands that what we saw on tape last year was a serious improvement on what we saw the previous year. And as the year went on, you saw flashes of really good play from Mozzie. So yeah, I do think it's within the realm of possible outcomes that you get a very, very good Mozzie Smith, much better than you expected. And it can transform the shape of this defense. I mean, just imagine for a second, if Mozzie showed up and was a top 20 nose tackle. I mean, I'm not even asking for a lot, right? If he was just a top 15 nose tackle, think about how much different you would feel about this defensive line. You've got 2 solid pass rushers at your 3 technique. You got a top 15 nose tackle. You've got more defensive ends than you probably even know what to do with at this point. So, I think it would really kind of transform your thought on not only the defensive line, but this defense overall.
Yeah, and that's the thing. Another thing is the fact that he's a defensive tackle with that, and tight end are kind of the 2 of the positions that it just takes longer for players to actually develop. And so if it's he's had other issues affecting him, but it's also the position, right? And so
6 defensive coordinators the last 6 years for him.
Oh yeah, he hasn't had the same one since
Michigan, right?
Yeah, since high school, right?
Yeah, it's crazy, right?
He's had an uphill climb.
Yeah, and I think people kind of write him off because he's a little He's kind of soft-spoken. He doesn't talk to the media a lot, so I think people assume that there's maybe not a huge commitment there. I think he's just been given a really terrible situation, and I'm hoping with this actual decent opportunity this offseason that he kind of does something with it and proves everyone wrong.
All right, I have 2 more questions for you. One. I know you love to do this with Marcus before the game, so let's get your official prediction for the season.
Making me do this, come on. Well, at least it's not a score prediction because that's
it.
I don't know. I mean, listen, it's hard to bet against Vegas, right? Those guys kind of know what they're talking about, but at the same time, like I look at this record, and last time I checked, they were at like 8 or 9 wins or something like that.
7.5 is the over/under line.
Yeah,
that's crazy.
Unless Dak like gets hurt again, like I know that the schedule is tough. Like that's one of the things going into this is like, but like it's always.
But don't you? But I mean, feels like Brandon, you have Joe Milton. What are you worried about?
That's right.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. He can throw an orange.
I mean, Dak won't even be starting by week 1 because Joe Milton, right? It's funny.
He's going to do to Dak what Dak did to Romo, right?
I mean, that's right. It's funny you mentioned that because does Marcus and I were talking about it last week. He's like, how long will it take after people see pictures of Joe Milton before they start talking about he should start over Dak? And today they tweeted out a picture of Joe Milton standing next to Dak. And I quote tweeted, I tagged Marcus. I was like, countdown begins, buddy. And sure enough, underneath the comments, that should be the real starter, you know.
Yeah.
I mean, the Seahawks. I saw Seahawks fans are already like Milroe. Let's get Milroe in here. And
hey, listen, I mean,
okay, cool.
When your GM trades away your best quarterback,
right,
replace him with Sam Darnold. I mean, you're
look,
man, for whatever straw you got, you know.
Again, we're rolling with Shuck and Rattler, and so. Y'all have fun. Y'all we'll be good. Y'all have fun.
Yeah.
My other question for you is what is your non-playoff or Super Bowl related? What is your favorite Cowboys game memory?
Well, to answer your question, other question, I think 9 or 10 wins probably is
that feels about right. We went through the schedule and I think I had them at 10 and 7.
Yeah, I
think
that's
you did.
So, my favorite. Well, this is easy actually. I was at. I mean, this is personal. Well, that's not so easy. I was at the Jason Garrett Thanksgiving Day game.
That's a good one.
And I actually was on the field before the game because Babe Laufenberg, who you may or may not does the Cowboys radio, former Dallas Cowboys cowboy, was
great radio guy by the way.
And let me be clear, A+ human being, like one of the best, nicest people you will ever meet in your entire life. My dad did travel for him, and so he knew him.
Oh wow!
And so he managed to get us onto the field before the game, and I have these great pictures of Emmitt Smith, like in Michael Irvin, with the star uniforms on. So that's one, right? And watching that game and witnessing Reggie White cursing the Cowboys fans, the Reverend Reggie White, I should mention.
This is before the conversion.
Cursing Cowboys fans as he's coming off the field. So that's one. The best experience that I've had, right, is so I live in Los Angeles, as you mentioned, right? And I had a buddy that works for me who had never been to a professional football game, had never been to a football game before.
Wow.
Like college or pro, right? And so I got tickets to a Cowboys preseason game, right? And I was like, man, like, you want to go with me? Like, they're really great tickets, and it was through work, so they were like really nice tickets, like, you know. And I was like, but don't expect a lot. It's a preseason game, you know. It is, you know, it's terrible.
I wonder if this is a certain preseason game I'm thinking of.
It is. Well, I mean, depending on what you mean, but
okay.
I'm at training camp that week, right? And I'm at practice, and I'm watching Tony Romo take some snaps, and or no, wait, I'm sorry, I'm watching Kellen Moore take snaps because Tony had just been injured in
Seattle.
In Seattle, like 3
Mhm.
days before. I'm watching Kellen Moore take snaps. I decided to go walk around the fence to kind of reposition myself, and then I just hear a huge like, "Oh!" sound from over the crowd from the opposite side of the field, and I'm like, "What did I miss?" And I go over there, and everyone's gathered around Kellen Moore, right? And so, and he's crumpled on the ground, and I'm like, what's going on? And so the next day, so I watched practice the rest of the day, and I'm like, man, okay. So the next day, I go to the LA Coliseum to watch the first professional football game in LA in 25 years, which I think gets lost in that story because the reason that's important will come up later. But again, the first professional football game for the Rams in 25 years, right? At the Coliseum. So I take it, my buddy. I'm even further, like, dude, not only is our starting quarterback hurt, but our backup quarterback is hurt. We got this rookie guy. He's looked okay in camp, okay, but I mean, look, let's not. This may be a terrible game. So so we're walking through the Coliseum, and first of all, the walk to the Coliseum was incredible. I mean, it was just because everybody was so excited, right?
Mm-hmm.
The Rams were back in Los Angeles. There was just a bunch of tailgating. It was just an incredible experience. So we get there. The opening kickoff is Lucky Whitehead returning.
I was trying to remember who it was.
The kickoff for the touchdown. And it only gets crazier from there because Dak absolutely goes nuts. And for those of you who aren't aware of what game I'm talking about, this happened to be Dak's arrival party. This was like no one knew who Dak Prescott was, right? Like he was this guy. I mean, we knew he was a 4th round pick. We knew he's a quarterback. I had been at training camp this whole time and had been like, well, who is this guy? He shows up. I wish I had the numbers in front of me, but I'm pretty sure he throws for like 250 yards and 4 touchdowns and like immediately throws a touchdown on like the second play of a snap he gets or something like that. It was absolutely the best case scenario. It was like one of the best games I'd ever seen, like just as far as things that were happening. And then like just as far as experience goes, just to get into this real quick, I'm sorry, I'm really rambling, but
no, you're good.
We get to halftime and like, they're at a TV timeout or something. And again, in Los Angeles, they play California Love in the stadium. I went to Auburn. I've been to Auburn, Alabama. I've been to all kinds of football experiences. I've seen crazy football experiences. I thought the Coliseum was going to crumble beneath my feet while everybody in that stadium was screaming every single lyric to California Love. It was one of the craziest football experiences I'd ever seen. And I just looked over at my buddy and I'm like, dude, I could not have been more wrong about how this game was going to turn out. Like I was like, I mean, first of all, really I was in pure it was joy because like I'm watching the future of the Dallas Cowboys be arriving on my lap, like just like Tony Romo did, and just this whole experience, top to bottom, was incredible football experience. So that's what that was probably my favorite football experience, even if things, the other games maybe were more historic in other ways.
I remember that game because we were me and my wife and like some friends had rented a house in Galveston, and so I was like, we had gone to the beach and it was like the evening, and so I came in and I was like, oh, the Cowboys game is on. I'm gonna watch a little of it. They're like hanging outside, and Dak he throws that touchdown pass. It like drops it in a bucket. Like
it was sick. I mean,
it was like a perfect pass, like perfect arc to it.
And he had not done anything like that in practice. Even once, like that. People may not remember this about Dak, but Dak was a gamer early on in his game, in his career. He couldn't practice at all. He was terrible at practice, but put him in the game and he pulled stuff like that off. It was incredible. And it was like, where did this even come from? It was crazy.
Yeah. And so I remember going out and I told my wife, I was like, I think he's going to be okay. I think we're going to be fine. It's like, I know Romo's hurt. I think this kid can actually play. And he was kind of because going into that draft, the guy that I wanted us to draft was Paxton Lynch.
That's who Jerry wanted to. Yeah.
And so when they didn't get Lynch, I was like, well, I kind of like Dak because the stuff at the Senior Bowl, like his leadership qualities had been kind of like everyone talked about, like the interviews, like the personality, the leadership qualities. And I was like, I wouldn't mind having him. And so they drafted him in the 4th. And I told my wife, I was like, okay, that's the guy I wanted. If we couldn't get Paxton, I wanted Dak. And so that one worked out. The Paxton Lynch experience. I mean,
yeah, not so much.
What's that country song? Some of God's greatest gifts are unanswered prayers, right?
That's right. Yeah. It's better. My mom used to always say, better to be lucky than good. Right.
Yep.
So sometimes you just you miss the hard thing and you get the good thing.
Yep.
What year was Dak drafted?
2016.
Yeah.
Okay, I was trying to think if that was the year the Saints drafted Garrett Grayson, but I don't think that's the year. Because I definitely was like, because I mean, you're talking about that was the twilight years of Breeze. Well, maybe not the twilight years, but that was So I was definitely like, okay, guys, you kind of need to like have a backup plan here, and you see where we ended up. But that's I won't complain about Saints quarterback situation again the rest of the show. Well, I can't promise that, but
I was gonna. Haven't the Saints like not drafted a quarterback in the first round like
50 years?
Yeah, 50 years. I was gonna say it was something ridiculous.
This year was the first time ever they drafted one in the second round.
Wow.
They had never drafted one in the second round, and they said, "What the shuck?" And that's where we're at. So
here we are.
Yeah, but no, I mean with Breeze, it was like. Because they had a chance to draft. Well, they famously in 2017 they were going to draft Mahomes. That was on the docket. They were going to, and then KC jumped them. In 2018, they traded up, and everybody's like, "Oh, they're going up for Lamar," and we drafted Marcus Davenport.
That didn't work out so well either.
No, it did not. Which, by the way, Brandon, you got my text about Shamar Stewart today?
Yes, I did.
Yeah, dodge that bullet. But anyways, but yeah, it's just so the quarterbacks they ended up drafting were like Garrett Grayson. I mean, Jay Kaner, obviously Spencer Rattler now. We had to kind of I thought we had something with Jameis in 2021, and then he tore his ACL, and I was like, well. So much for that. And then
I liked Rattler when he was coming out. I thought he was worth the gamble.
We obviously there was a lot of you may have seen #the agenda trending last year.
Yes, I know the agenda. Yes.
Oh yeah, and I was definitely like, please just let him be not terrible. Like he doesn't have to be. It doesn't have to be the Dak situation, but like at least let him just be like serviceable. Where coming into this year, I hope, and Brandon and I have talked about this. My hope is that. We have an open quarterback competition going into training camp with Shuck and with Rattler. Now, obviously, Kellen Moore, he drafted Shuck. He believes in Shuck, which I thought he was going to be on Jackson Dart, but that
me too.
It is what it is. Which I guess leads me into if I can ask.
Yeah, go ahead, Paul.
Ask a question.
Yep.
So you kind of referenced Kellen Moore from a coaching standpoint. You referenced that 2021 season, I believe it was, with Dak. And one of the things that is attractive about Kellen Moore as a head coaching candidate is he has worked with these different quarterbacks, right? He worked with Dak, he worked with Justin Herbert, obviously with Jalen Hurts. I won't bring up too much about the Eagles because I know who I'm talking to.
Thank you.
By the way, sorry about the Zach Bond thing. Like, our bad. But anyway.
What were you guys doing? What were you guys doing with him?
Hey, I wasn't there. I wasn't in the meetings. I wasn't in the meetings. I was just,
I'm just speaking for John Owning too, because I know that both of us were very frustrated by the fact that he wasn't correctly when he got drafted.
Every week, Zach Bond would do something last year, and Brandon would be like, "So," and we get to the Eagles game, he'd be like, "Yeah, so Zach Bond did something else." I'm like, "Yep, I know, I get it." Like,
I blame him for that. Malcolm Jenkins.
Yeah, that's another one.
I'm not worried about Malcolm Jenkins. I kind of think that they made the right decision about Malcolm Jenkins. If Malcolm Jenkins plays 5 games next year, I will be really surprised.
Well, no. Malcolm Jenkins is he's retired.
Oh wait, I'm sorry. I was thinking of who's the corner. I completely Matt Lattimore is what I was.
Yeah.
Oh
yeah. I'm with you on that one.
Yeah, like my brain.
Yeah, no, you're good. And then we ended up drafting his replacement with the pick we got for him anyway. So, but anyway, getting back to Kellen Moore, what can Saints fans kind of expect from him on the field, off the field? I have to be honest, I wasn't a huge fan. You kind of talked about the process with Schottenheimer. The Saints process was garbage. I mean, it's like, oh, we're going to put a request in for Ben Johnson. Ben Johnson don't want to coach the Saints. Mike Vrabel doesn't want to coach the Saints. Like, nobody wants to coach this team. And Kellen Moore almost felt like, oh, okay, the musical chairs have stopped, and the only person left is Kellen Moore. Now, I've heard that Kellen actually wanted this job for whatever reason. And so maybe you just speak a little bit to, like, in the time that you've maybe covered him when he was there, like, what can we expect from him?
Well, as far as what you can expect, I mean, I think it's one of the biggest questions, in the NFL this year, right? Because I think you look at what Kellen Moore's done, and it's everything. I mean, he's kind of done a little bit of this, a little bit of that, and so, I think it's interesting because when he came into Dallas, I mean, he was basically running a Linehan's offense, just with the tweaking it the same way that we're hoping that Schottenheimer tweaks the McCarthy offense, right? Where you're taking the shell of what was already built and you're using it in a new way, and it's amazing, it's really great, right? And I think Kellen just knew, because he was obviously the quarterback of the team and on the staff at a certain point, he knew exactly the kind of things to tweak, where to kind of make small adjustments in what was already the Linehan offense in order to kind of make it really shine, right? Much like Schottenheimer hopes to do with the McCarthy offense. And then he goes off to Los Angeles with the Chargers. He spends a year there, and kind of a disastrous a season with the Chargers just all around. And I don't know that it necessarily was his fault that it was that was the way it was. I think the Chargers have been charging since well before he got there, and they'll be charging long beyond after the Suns eaten us all and imploded. So I think it's hard to blame him for what happened there. I think, but I think the point being that what he did there was also very different than what he did in Dallas. And then he goes into Philadelphia, and it's basically the Sirianni offense that he's calling. I think, what I would define Kellen Moore as is a problem solver. I think he's as far as an offensive play caller, I think he likes to take the pieces that are handed to him and then kind of figure out the best way to do the things that he needs to do with that. I think that he's creative in the sense that he's very open-minded in where he kind of sources his plays from. I mean, one of the big things he did when he was in Dallas was have a weekly meeting where they kind of went over tape of college offenses that did interesting things that he liked. And I thought that was a really cool idea, and that I wouldn't be shocked at all if he continued to do that now that he's kind of has a little bit more autonomy. I think the thing that's really interesting here is that I don't really know, like it's and again, not to point to the Schottenheimer situation, though at least Schottenheimer has this experience. I don't really know a time in which Kellen had I guess with the Chargers, but only for one season, where he had full autonomy over the offense, Okay. I mean, with McCarthy, he was definitely in control, but McCarthy was still there as the cop. And then as time went on, his control got less and less. And then with Philly, it's really hard to know what was Kellen's and what was Sirianni's. But I will say this. I do think that you're going to have a guy that's committed to running the football and then making sure that play action is a part of what they're doing. Because I do think that whether it was under Linehan, whether it was under McCarthy, I mean, even though they threw the ball all over the yard, they were committed to making sure that they had a solid run game. And obviously that goes double when you talk about what he did in Philadelphia.
Yeah, I've told Paul that like the one thing that always bothered me about Kellen is like he always seemed he would have cool trick plays a lot of times.
Too tricky.
And sometimes he would get too cute, and then also those didn't necessarily always tie to other things in the offense, and so they were kind of like
random,
just one-off plays rather than a whole. You don't really know what his like concept of an offense overall. Like you talked about, like he's never had like carte blanche for an offense. Like you don't really know what is his identity and what does
it's hodgepodge, right?
Yeah, very much so.
I mean, he comes from an offensive system at Boise where they had like an enormous playbook, and they would just kind of part of what made him so special is that they could run a bunch of different stuff at any time, and you have to preparing for them was incredibly difficult. So, and you think about like him beating Oklahoma when he was at Boise State. How did they do it? A bunch of crazy trick plays, right? Yep. And like fooling, just getting enough of an angle. So I imagine that it's going to be that. But yeah, I agree that I do think that he's at times struggled to kind of fold all of that creativity into a fully cohesive offense.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. It's going to be interesting. I mean, I will say the way he's kind of presented himself in press conferences, what I've gotten to hear him talk, he definitely seems, this is not saying much, he definitely seems more put together than say Dennis Allen. But I am, I'll use our favorite phrase for this episode, cautiously optimistic. I told Brandon, I think before the draft, I said, and this is even before the Carr retirement thing, I'm like, Saints are going to be the worst team in the NFC. Like that was just my thought. But then we started looking at the schedule last week when it came out, and I'm like, this team's going to screw around and win like 6 games. Like they're just going to, like it's just, and so I don't know. I am happy that the Carr thing has been resolved at least to where we have kind of a clean slate and we can move forward with that. So, and we don't play the Cowboys this year. We do play the Giants. So we will.
Man, that'll be a quarterback game to remember.
Well, it's week 5. It's week 5. So it'll probably be, it might be Dart versus Shuck, but it'll probably be Russ versus Shuck. I would imagine.
Yeah. I don't know. I kind of scratch my head at the whole. I wonder what I wonder what Kellen was told was the quarterback situation when he took the job.
Mm-hmm. So I'm just gonna tell you what I've heard, and this is all who knows. I heard that Kellen was only going to take the job if Derek Carr was not the quarterback. That's what I've heard.
Okay. Well, that makes sense. I mean, all of Derek Carr's posture seems to be like.
Right.
Hey, I kind of didn't really get a choice there.
Now, this to speak to my point about Kellen presenting himself well in his opening press conference, spoke well of Carr, but wasn't committal. As we went through like January, February, it was like, well, it looks like it's going to be Carr, and then all of a sudden after the draft or right before the draft, that report comes out, hey, Carr's got this shoulder thing that's might sideline him for the rest of the season. And then, of course, after the retirement comes out, Kellen Moore never met with Derek Carr, ever. Like, they never met face-to-face. So, look, I think it's just a clean slate for everybody. I told Brandon last week, it felt like Derek Carr retired from the Saints, not the NFL. But it's come out subsequent to that Carr's like, nope, I'm gone. I'm done. I've played my 11 years.
Yeah,
maybe he is. I don't know, but
or maybe he wasn't going to retire, and this kind of was what pushed him over the edge.
But I mean, ESPN, I think it was Jeremy Fowler reported last week that before he announced his retirement, his people reached out to 2 different teams about potential trades. I think it was the Vikings and the Steelers which makes sense. I mean, Steelers definitely make sense right now, but
and maybe the fact that he didn't get any bites was like, you know what?
That's what I'm thinking.
It's over.
Yeah.
To me, the sliding door is, what if Tennessee doesn't get the first pick in the draft? If Tennessee's not number one pick and they don't get Cam Ward, Carr has a relationship with Brian Callahan. If that happens, does Derek Carr's shoulder all of a sudden feel better? You know what I mean? Like that's well, obviously we'll never know, but
I can't believe you don't think they'd have faith in Will Levis, the Will Levis experience.
I got to tell you, that's one of the most uninteresting what ifs I've ever heard in my life. Oh no, Derek Carr with Brian.
I'll work on it. I should have worked with Brandon before we.
No, I'm just talking about the people involved, not anything more than that. It's just so. I am just to speak on that real quick. I am excited to see what Cam Ward does because I do think that's an interesting mix. I think
the Saints do play the Titans late in the season, like week 17 or something. Yeah, so we'll see.
I know Landon's also itching to see Shadur Sanders take the field too, right?
If he takes the field, I don't have a problem with Shadur Sanders. I think everybody just talks about him all the damn time. It's just, and it doesn't really make a lot of sense to me. And I think, I also think people just like talk about that situation like he's been wronged somehow. And you know, I kind of feel like him not going in the first two rounds is about him and his talent. I think him not going every other round until he got drafted was about his dad.
It's about the other stuff at that point, right?
Exactly. Yeah. So, that's who I am.
A couple more questions here, Landon. We do appreciate your time. We don't want to take up too much more of your time, but so one of the things Brandon and I like to do on the show every week is we have a patron saint cowboy. So someone who played for both teams. Usually we have some kind of extra criteria thrown in, but do you have kind of a favorite Saint / Cow, someone who's played for both Saints and Cowboys that you can think of? I can give you a couple of our favorites if that would helps.
Yeah, maybe at least to help me buy time while I think about it.
Grease the wheels. So our favorite, one of our favorites is Leroy Glover from early 2000s.
Yeah.
Obviously, Andy Dalton is
okay.
Red Rifle.
We actually live where I actually live in where Andy Dalton grew up. I live in the town Andy Dalton grew up. So
are we counting Dan Campbell as a Saint?
He
was assistant coach for Peyton, wasn't he?
Correct. He was. Yeah. So I mean that'll count. So we try to go by the Immaculate Grid rules of they had to play, but fair. I mean, we did an episode where I put Sean Payton as a patron saint cowboy because he coached for both teams, obviously.
Wade Wilson, Julius Jones.
Oh God, yeah, Julius Jones.
All the ones that I mean, seriously, I am terrible at keeping track of where players go after they leave the Cowboys.
I will say you have the potential for another one this upcoming season in Mr. Peyton Turner.
Oh, that's true. Yeah, Turner did. Yeah, Turner's the guy that I don't know if he's quite fallen into the category of favorite Cowboy yet. Especially since at this point, man, I mean, it feels like the Cowboys signed several players that they have almost immediately made unnecessary. And Peyton Turner feels like one of them, right? Where it's like you signed him, but then you just drafted a bunch of guys, and you've got a bunch of guys coming back. It's like
his Saints career was pretty unnecessary, if I may say so.
To be fair, you guys drafted him in the first round when he was a third rounder, so that was probably your first.
I wasn't in the room. I didn't.
Hey. Listen, I'm just saying, you need to call Loomis up and tell him I said so.
Oh, right? If I call Loomis, I'm gonna tell him something, but it ain't gonna be that.
You got some other conversations to get to first.
I always give him a hard time about Marcus Davenport. That's my personal favorite Saints first rounder.
So
the Cowboys have a Loomis in their front office too. Did you know that?
You want another one?
No, no, I'm good. We'll send ours back to you.
So funny story for this past draft. I told Brandon, I said, if the Saints draft Shamar Stewart in the first round, I will quit because we were doing a live stream. I will quit the live stream. Like just hang up. So first round comes, we get Kelvin Banks, who I was actually pleased with. And then when it gets to the Cowboy pick at 12, I had to step aside for a minute. And I get back on the call, and Brandon's like, Paul, I think I'm quitting the call. And I was like, what happened? And I looked, and it said, Tyler Booker for Valentine. It's like, so that was Brandon's Shamar Stewart. But I think it's going to work out for you guys.
I think so, too.
I don't hate Shamar Stewart either, so I don't know. I mean, I'm a fan. So
as a UT grad, I was kind of hoping for we went a different direction there.
You were hoping you wanted a golden boy, yeah.
That's fair.
No, I mean, look, Shamar. The only reason I didn't want Shamar Stewart is he smelled like a Marcus Davenport type, like graded really well, combine, won the underwear Olympics, but like no production in college. So it's like, I'm good. Like we've been there, we've done that. Like let's just get somebody who's gonna like. We've had the Marcus Davenports, the Peyton Turners, the Isaiah Foskis. You know, like let's try to go another direction. But anyway, let me see if there's another. Oh, I did want to ask. So this is kind of recent news. Actually, broke today. We're recording this May 20th. The Olympics, football in the Olympics in 2028. So I guess Brandon, I haven't had a chance to talk to you about this either. So I'll open it to both of you guys. Who are some Cowboys now? If I can guarantee that they'll remain healthy. Who are some Cowboys you guys would like to see participate in the Olympics?
All right, first off, specifically it's flag football, right? So, and that's important because it's a different game than regular football.
Right.
Yes.
So, right. And second, this is more of a procedural question than anything.
Okay.
The Olympics actually takes place in 2028. So are we pretending like
true.
Are we pretending like it's now?
I didn't think about that.
I think you have to, because otherwise trying to predict 3 years from now
exactly.
is ridiculous.
Yeah,
so
that's true.
Let's say it's now, right?
Yeah. I meant to say like current roster if we were doing it. Yeah. Good.
All right.
Good.
First overall pick, without a doubt, is Kevontae Turpin.
Yep.
100%. I mean, he's your number one receiver on offense. He's your number one pass rusher on defense, right?
He's your special teams return guy too, doing spin moves everywhere.
He's your team. He's your MVP, right? And then second pick is Micah Parsons, as far as I'm concerned.
Okay.
Because you can play both ways. You can play whatever you want him to, basically. And then probably CeeDee Lamb would be my top three picks.
I think you nailed that. I mean, if you want a cover guy, I guess
Diggs
is because he can play both ways too.
Receiver.
Yeah, exactly. Yep.
So I think those are the guys. Marcus and I did this exercise, and those were the four guys that we kind of highlighted, and then maybe Joe Milton, right?
Oh yeah, throw ball far.
Throw ball far.
Yeah. So I just got two more. So I'll try to make it quick. So, is there any player currently on the Saints roster? And I realize you may not be intimately familiar with the Saints roster, but is there any player currently on the Saints roster that you know of that you're like, man, I'd like to have him on the Cowboys?
Ooh, that's a good question. Let me hold on. I got a depth chart.
Brandon Cooks.
Sorry, I couldn't
help myself.
I mean, listen, I wouldn't be upset with having Alvin Kamara on the team, honestly. I mean, just to have a veteran running back on the team, like especially a guy like that, I mean, that would be pretty excellent.
He played pretty well in Cowboy Stadium last year, for what it's worth.
He sure did, from what I remember before I blacked out.
Listen, it was the highlight of the season, Landon. I had to.
I'll give it to you. I'll give it to you, buddy, for sure. Absolutely, it was an incredible game. Seriously, I really was impressed by what they were able to pull off. I'm looking at this maybe DeMario Davis or Pete Warner, just because. I mean,
no,
look,
you don't want Pete Warner.
hey, but have you seen our depth chart lately? We got a lot of injuries, man. Like,
hey, Matt. Hey, Pete Warner's about to lose his job to Danny Stutzman from Oklahoma, the cracker with the juice, as he calls himself.
Buddy, I mean, meet Kenneth Murray. Like,
yeah, that's
true.
Kenneth Murray lost his job in Tennessee. So, yeah.
That's
I mean,
true.
look, yeah, it's all in the eye of the
Leighton Vander Esch isn't walking through that door anytime soon, I guess.
Leighton Vander Esch isn't walking through anybody's doors anytime soon.
No. And then the last one, I know we talked about, Brandon asked you about the record. For the Cowboys this year, what would you deem successful as like a successful 2025 season?
Yeah, that's a good question. I mean, it is.
Short of winning, I mean, obviously everybody wants to win the Super Bowl. I get it, but like,
I mean, this seems like a cop-out answer, but honestly, to me, I don't feel like I even know enough about the team yet to set expectations. Right? Like, I mean, that's why that's why I think you're seeing, Vegas set the line at 7.5, and then I'm looking at the line and going, man, I see 9 wins here, easy. Like, so I don't know. Like, I think there's just so much that's changed that it's hard to know what the expectations are. I think for me, like, regardless, I would be happy with a playoff win. Okay. I know that's a kind of a sideways step from where we should be expecting with Dak Prescott, but I think considering all the resetting that was done, like all the kind of new stuff, to me, the window starts next year, right? Like if they can set themselves up to be Super Bowl contenders a year from now, I'll feel pretty good about the way they played.
Yeah, and you and Landon talked about it a lot last year. Is 2025 felt like a reset, or 2024 felt like a reset year for them, and so this is kind of like the first step on that. Not a rebuild, but like just kind of a step back, and then let's build it back up. And this is the first kind of season of that.
Yep, absolutely.
Well, I tell Brandon all the time. Like I always hope for a Cowboys Saints NFC Championship game. It most likely won't happen this year, but down the road maybe.
Yeah, I'll take it. Anybody, honestly.
Any NFC Championship
team,
at this
game. Any NFC Championship game, I'll take it.
I do think, and I'm not pandering to the audience, I promise. I do think the Cowboys have a decent chance of at least surpassing Washington, because I really think Washington's taking a step back this year.
Washington's taking a step back this year.
I think Philly's taking a step back this year too. Like losing both coordinators is a deal. Oh no, well they lost Kellen. They just lost Kellen. Sorry,
they still got Fangio.
They still got Fangio, but like losing, having another offensive coordinator. I know Sirianni's probably the more of the brains of that, but
I don't know. Sirianni's the brains of.
Yeah, well, it's funny. They just gave him that big contract, and by week 4, they were trying to throw him out of the building. So yeah,
well,
it's very volatile.
I told Brandon. I mean, it was really that Saints game that they played in New Orleans that turned their season around. Because if they don't win that game, they're 1-2 and two losses in a row, and
Yeah, I remember, buddy. I was really mad that the Saints couldn't find early season Saints for one more game for us just to help us out.
That is exactly what I told him every time.
That was the tides, right? Like the Eagles were going this way, Saints were going this way, because like Eric McCoy gets hurt that game.
What are the odds that the Eagles play a lesser version of a team that played the Cowboys really tough early in the season? Man, I've never seen that script happen before.
Little familiar.
Man. Little familiar. All right. Well, Landon, thanks so much. Appreciate the time. Brandon, you got anything else for Landon?
No, thanks for coming on. We enjoyed it.
Thanks for having me, y'all. It was a lot of fun.
All right. We'll catch you next time.